Hello, it's Jack Clue with the Veterans in Your Corner podcast. It has been a while since we've come at you, but we are here again finally. We actually had this interview with Obie Madison months ago now. I don't know how long, but it has been a while. This was the first time that I met Obie. He served 12 years in the armed forces. I believe you'll have to listen to the podcast to see. Quiet guy. And then you realize he was a drill sergeant, which was incredible because, like I told him, my favorite movie growing up was, well, one of my favorite movies was Major Payne with Damon Wayans, and he just does not seem the type. But of course, there's more to people than meets the eye. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Here's Obie.
And so that means that you had to have a memory that you could sit there and call back and look at a person and line them up, in a certain order, help them to march in a step by step. You learn who can help you to carry this platoon to make it across the finish line. Because I can see people, that are not in the military have some of the same challenges.
Yes. Okay. Well, we're having Obie Madison on our Veterans podcast, Veterans in Your Corner. And Obie, the idea here is we just want to get people to share their experience with people who are interested in, and the idea here is to help people get a better understanding of the military experience. And most people don't know what it is and won't experience it. So we're going to hear your story and so why don't you begin by introducing yourself and tell us where you're from, a little bit about, how you got interested even to go in and the branch of service you were in.
My name is Obie Madison, born in Philadelphia, raised there until the sixth grade. Family moved to Florida, where I finished high school and at Pensacola High School, Pensacola, Florida. During the time in high school, I actually was in the Air Force ROTC.
Oh, I didn't know that. And
all lines were leading to the Air Force, but that didn't happen. I ended up joining the Army during the time in high school when the recruiters came around. All my friends were going and joining, getting on delayed entry. And
yeah.
A couple of times I went with them, but I didn't join. I just kept on playing it out, and so the recruiters kind of got tired of me coming and still wouldn't join. And then it was one day I went up there, I said, if they can give me a job while I'm not out there, out on the ground shooting, this, that, and the other, I would take it. So I ended up getting a personal administrative position. And my parents, I had went up there so many times, they figured, hey, he's going up there, he coming back, he ain't gonna be in.
Okay.
But that time I did join. I came back and told them. They was surprised because, at that time I was still young. I was at the age 16, so my mother had to sign for me.
You were very young.
Yes.
What year was that, do you figure?
That was in 81.
81.
Well, actually it was in 80 because it was delayed entry.
Okay.
Right.
So you were checking this out. I thought I checked it out early at 17. You were at 16.
What's delayed entry? What does that mean?
Delayed entry is where you can be able to go in and say you want to join the military. You're actually saying, yes, I'm going to join. And as soon as I graduate high school, a date is set and you go.
Oh, okay.
The contract is signed.
Yeah.
And so it's an obligation.
Really?
Yeah, it's one that's very difficult to get out of.
Right. So pretty much you're in, and actually the time that you sign up counts.
Counts towards retirement.
Counts towards your time.
Yeah, that's nice.
Right.
I did that.
And so along with that, I 2 weeks out of high school, I was gone.
Yeah.
So I didn't stick around and do anything. And
what was it like when you were getting ready to, like the night before? Were you nervous? Do you remember what it was like?
I think there was some anxiety, and just natural. I did have some anxiety, but at the same time, I was looking forward to go and just get away. I grew up in a family where mom and dad was there, and they took care of us. And I mean, it wasn't too much that I could ask for. My sisters always tell me I was spoiled, but I say I wasn't. But
how many sisters did you have?
I have 5 sisters.
Wow.
Any brothers, or was it all sisters?
One brother and another. Well, I'd say 2 brothers, because a friend of ours, a brother of ours, his mother died early after he was first born. And so we were next door to each other, living in Philadelphia. So she ended up raising him also.
Okay.
So he's our brother.
Yeah.
And so he also joined the military a year after I did. And
wow.
So It was awesome. And, when I got ready to go, like I said, the anxiety was there, but I went and,
what was your MOS? What job did you sign up for?
75 Bravo, Personnel Administrative Specialist. And ended up going into Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
For basic
training and did my basic there. And it was during the time when they was just integrating males and females.
Sure.
In the same quad. And so that was
quad,
different.
Describe what a quad. If I was looking at the quad, what would I see?
That means you would have 2 platoons downstairs and 2 platoons upstairs.
Oh, in the barracks building.
So
okay.
A, B, C,
Okay.
C and D. Right. So it was 2 platoons of females and 2 platoons of males.
Okay.
And so, with that, we were kind of like examples. And here it is, all of us just coming from out of the street, and they're telling us, don't talk to those girls, don't look over there, and, all that different great stuff. And so, but we had a great time in learning, great training, didn't get hurt. But it was challenging. It was a challenging because I hadn't did a lot of things in high school except go to school. Last 2 years of high school, I was did a business machine repairman class at a vocational technical school because I had all my credits.
Okay.
So the last 2 years, I got away from high school half a day, and half a day I was gone somewhere else. And so the other thing was tied to that is that when I finished high school, I had a job offer in Miami to do the business machine repairman, making good money.
Yeah.
I was accepted at an aerotech school, because of the ROTC Air Force.
Oh, sure.
And
would you recommend ROTC or any of those programs for high schoolers today?
I would, because I think the discipline that is set, the knowledge that they will learn, because I see that in some states there's a stigma where they feel that the military isn't all that great, and especially some of the things that are going on, and people are steering their young people away from it when it probably will be some of the best things for a lot of them. A lot of them don't have anything to do, and we see what's happening, in society now. Mm-hmm. And I would encourage that they at least join ROTC and find out some, so they can find out the background and the surrounding of the military. Even, just as in everything else, we always have people that want to give information about something that they don't know anything about at all.
Right.
And so that's what's happening a lot in society. And
so if somebody gets in a high school person, boy or girl, gets into ROTC, they're going to learn what firsthand.
Right.
They're going to learn about the Army or the Air Force or the branches, and they can formulate a firsthand opinion. Right.
They can formulate that opinion. They also have some, a good sense of the foundation of, what the language is all about, what's the actual mission of that or definition of that service that they could be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as I tell children now or young adults that are thinking about or trying to figure out which way to go, look at each different service. And that's what I did. I looked at each one of them, and I decided from there what I wanted to do. And I think that if they look at that and they find out the mission of each one of those services.
I agree with that completely.
That it can help them, and they can find something that will really fit the niche that they're looking for.
The ROTC? I never was a part of it, but I did sports.
Right.
Is it you just join it like a sport, and then you get to just be a part of it when it's done? The season's over. I mean, is it all year round? I didn't know. All I knew is the guys in school would come and do the colors,
right?
Like before
have
state championships games. And
well, ROTC is a class, just like all of your other classes in the military. Say if you got home economics or this class or that class.
Okay.
But ROTC was a class that you could take at least 2 years, normally your last 2 years or so in high school. So you could be in there this year and then go back again next year, and also gain ranks, the same way you would in the military. So it teaches you the ranking system.
Okay.
It teaches you, how the discipline works, how you should act and carry yourself, how to wear a uniform.
Yeah.
A lot of people need to learn how to dress.
Who are the teachers?
The instructors that they have are retired military people that have retired successfully and have gained the instructing ability to go in and teach about that service that they're part of.
Mm-hmm.
Man, my only experience with the ROTC was I was singing the national anthem at a
championship football game at the Fargo Dome.
Yeah.
And I sang the words wrong. And their instructor, oh man, he ripped me.
Oh,
He came up and I was like, I didn't mean to sing the verse twice. He goes, you sang that verse twice.
Oh,
But
I wonder how many people in the stadium didn't even notice.
he sure noticed.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's one of the benefits of going through that program.
Right. Yeah, you get to learn things and things that a lot of people won't look at. People, that look at different things about what our nation stands for, what we stand for, those that have respect, those that don't. And it makes a difference, and knowing and being in a setting that you understand what's going on.
What's your total years of service?
I did 12 and a half active years.
Okay,
in the Army.
12 and a half.
Yes. And like I said, again, those years that I did in the Air Force ROTC during that time, I also was part of the drill team.
Oh, okay.
So I was part of that group that got out there, and I was assistant drill team commander. I got out there and, we're at the games and took the rifles and swung them and threw them and all that, and twirled and, so it was something that, you got a chance to enjoy. So you were part of.
Did you get any feedback from your classmates about that?
No, not really,
Okay.
because they really, I think a lot of them respect us, from what we were doing, how we also contributed to making things look nice and keeping things in order when we were there for the basketball or the football games or whatever game we was there for and performing. They all appreciate it. So I think, and just from that gave some of the other students a chance to see how it looks with someone wearing a uniform. So it drawed other people to it. But I think those that didn't have anything to be a part of, wanted to be a part of something, those people that were in ROTC, that were serious about it, they set a good example for others around the school.
So in the 80s, Chaplain Clue asked us a lot, though, of other people so far that we've had on, what was happening in the world? In, what was it? You said 1981? Is that when you joined?
Right.
So what was going on in the world when you joined?
What was going on in the world? In my world?
Or your world, yeah. It could be nationally, it could be citywide.
Just like, so you know how we're thinking, when I went in the first time, Vietnam was in its last third of the war.
Right.
So there was a lot of anti-war, anti-establishment. The government was bad, institutions were bad. So that's how I entered the military.
Right.
What was it like? What was going on in the world when you were?
Well, I entered in what I guess mostly they call the post and the Cold War. Nothing was really happening. It wasn't a threat to really anybody during that time frame. It was a more comfortable time to, join. And I think that that was one of the things that I didn't have to worry about, because it wasn't a thought there that, hey, we already in war, or something's going on, or conflict just happened, and how long is it going to linger as we're dealing with things now? So none of that was there. So the fears of that and the thoughts of it was not even there. It wasn't talked about, and the other thing that was pressed upon is that the training that you'll receive, it'll be able to help you if anything that, you need to do if conflict happens. And I always looked at it this way, well, the job I got, I won't be out there. I'll be behind.
Oh, sure.
Combat support, and support of them,
What? So you didn't want to shoot a gun? You didn't want to go out there?
No, I did. I learned. Actually, I got, I think in basic training, I had a sharpshooter, and as I went on and climbed the ladder and got expert and same as in grenades and all the rest of it. I just kept it rolling from there and always stayed.
Kept rolling the grenade?
Yeah, kept rolling to make sure it didn't come back.
Yeah, right. So, so your first assignment was where, Obie?
My first assignment after AIT in Fort Ben Harrison, Indiana, was I went to Schweinfurt, Germany.
Oh, your first assignment, mine was too. First assignment, was that scary for you?
It was quite interesting because, I said I didn't want to be outside doing this, that, and the other, and I said I wanted to, and the way they say it to you real nicely, well, how about going to Europe? Or, going here.
Oh, the recruiters.
Right. And so I said, yeah, Europe. Oh, great. You know, so Europe was Germany.
Okay, sure.
And so I ended up there, and when I got to Germany, I got there, I was on a bus, and then they was taking us to a place, and I'm sitting there, what was this? This was around I left in, what was it, June.
Mm-hmm.
And in July. No, I think it was about August or September by the time I got to Germany, because I had to go through AIT. But over there, you know, in Germany during that time frame, it's kind of gloomy and cloudy looking.
Okay. Right.
You know, it was cold. And so you're sitting here riding around the side of a mountain, you know, after you got off the plane, you ride around the side of the mountain on this nice bus, but you're looking straight down.
Okay.
And like, Lord, you know,
Yeah.
hope this bus stays up here, you know. But it was beautiful to see, but, you know, it was interesting, you know, just to see that type of terrain, you know, coming from a person that has lived in Philadelphia for, you know, half of his life and then moved to Florida, and, you know, you go from the city life and then go to, you know, here you are in semi-wood country. So it was a big difference for me, you know. So here, it was this new thing that I was to accept and had to embrace. So I got there and began to integrate myself. You know, in working the job that I worked for the first sergeant and the company commander. So
Okay.
I wasn't too much out there with everybody else all the time. So.
So you became comfortable early in your life around rank,
Right.
and authority.
Right.
Okay, that's a plus.
Right. And so, you know, I was responsible for handling all the administration for all the soldiers that were assigned to that unit, you know, be it, you know, they have personnel information, they have finance information, make sure they got paid, make sure, you know, if an emergency came up, they had to go home. I had to process that, you know, over in Europe. Then, you know, we had what they call ration cards. So for them smoke cigarettes, I was the ration card issuer.
So a lot of everything came through you.
Everything.
Wow.
You know, I had to handle controlled items. I had a security clearance. I had a NATO secret clearance. And so there was a lot I had to do. And you know, along with that, the company commander and the first sergeant was there to help to guide me through it. And as I learned and got efficient at it, you know, I had to be responsible for making sure when it came time for everybody to get the promotion, I had to make sure who was ready. And
well, I was just thinking, how long did it take you to become proficient and confident in that?
It took, I would say, probably almost a year, you know, to really get confident in it. But as I learned, and the company commander and the first sergeant were comfortable with me, you know, there was always in the assignment, and as far as when you get ready to promote people, there was always sometimes you would have what they call a waiver. You know, someone might not have the time in grade or time in service, and they'll look through and say, well, you know, this soldier here has been doing great, you know, and let's go ahead and give him that waiver. And I remember one time, you know, I said, well, we got a waiver here, you know, and when I went in, I was, I think I was at E2 or E3.
Okay.
E2. But I think in the first 6 months, I got promoted to E3. And then before leaving there, I had ended up with specialist E4, and then I ended up getting that by one of those waivers.
Oh,
you know.
okay. So you did well.
Right. I did. And so I enjoyed what I was doing. I appreciated it. And I worked very closely with our headquarters that was above us, you know, because everything was tied into that. So I had a great time in the service. And
what did it mean? Did wearing the I've asked this to everybody, and did wearing the uniform have any special meaning to you?
Well, it had a very significant meaning to me, as you know, in serving my country, being part of the Army. That as at that time it wasn't, as they say, the Army of One, but just knowing that we were there to defend our country, and being over in Germany at that time, you know, we would, you know, be out there on the post, and everybody would look, and the Germans would look at you, and they would respect you, you know, for your uniform and what you did. And me in my position, the company that I was in a combat engineer unit.
Okay.
And
explain what combat engineers do, or what their mission is.
Combat engineers, they are the ones that when it comes down to wartime, they were the ones that would go in and set up the bridges and had those
build things.
Right, yeah, to make sure that you could get across and do whatever you need to do, and to put things in place, and and then we had the field artillery around us. Everything on that whole post was combat, and so sometimes the whole post would be cleared out because they would be gone off to training sites. Grafenbeer, Hohenfels, somewhere where they would go sometimes for 30, 45 days at a time. And during that time frame, I was left back, at the unit because I still had to make sure the administration went. I had to make sure that those soldiers that were out in the field had the mail that they were receiving.
Oh, sure.
So I had to make sure I stayed there, processed the mail, make sure things got to them as they needed it. And so it would also help to keep the morale up, because, if that mail is not flowing, anything that's happening at home and then they're gone for 30, 45 days and there could be emergency going on, and the only way that they could be reached is by mail or if a Red Cross call.
Yeah, and it's very different now. We've learned from we had a young fella in here last week, young enough to be my son, letters and everything. I don't hear people talk about receiving letters anymore because he can have email and all kinds of. So talk about, what was it like your first holiday away, out of country in Germany or wherever that would be? Do you remember what your first holiday felt like? What that was like for you?
It was quite different, being in another country and not knowing anybody as far as out on the economy in the city. So you were pretty much there, with those other young people around your age and those, the sergeants that have been around for a while. So either you were going to the dining facility where they served a nice big meal, Thanksgiving or Christmas meal for all the soldiers, or, sometimes some of the sergeants, would maybe invite a squad or two over at a certain time, or, or they would bring something in for them. So, all of those things, they tried to keep it family-oriented as much as possible, but, we always had those things that you couldn't fraternize, you couldn't do certain things with, troops because of the certain ranks and stuff. So all those things were carefully dealt with. So
for somebody that doesn't know fraternize, I know what that is. Define fraternize.
Well, fraternization would be, that means that a sergeant and private are going out and having dinner together, and pretty much you should not have any type of relationship that will, I would say, threaten or jeopardize, your rank or your being responsible for making sure that the duties are carried out. They figure that, I went out and had dinner with you, or I went out and had a beer with you, and you can't tell me nothing now. We're buds.
It can compromise the chain.
Right. Yeah. We're buds now.
Right.
And that's not true. And and so in order to keep that, that's the reason why fraternization is put in place, and to make sure that people don't cross those boundaries. And so the best thing to do was to keep things in order, try to encourage your soldiers, and try to make sure that they did the right thing.
What kind of and we're talking about one assignment, Germany, and we'll go on to some other things. What were some of the issues that you saw come through the head shed that the commander and the first sergeant had to deal with? What were some happy stuff? I'm sure there was probably some legal stuff, and then there was probably some morale stuff. Give me a taste of what that was.
Well, one of the main things is that it was always encouraged to keep the morale up. We would always get those conversations, and on Friday afternoon, you get ready to go for the weekend. Y'all make sure y'all go out here and, don't go out and mess up. I don't want to be called, because y'all didn't do it out here, did something crazy or this, that, and the other. It was that pep talk. It was that pep talk, it was like from your big brother or your father.
We called it the safety briefing.
Right. Yeah. The same thing, safety briefing.
All right.
So they would give you that, and it would help to let you know that somebody cared about, you knew where you're at. We're here representing the military, and we just can't be just out here just acting any kind of way. And so,
so and most of the young people, or most of the soldiers were your age, do you think, or how did that look?
It varied. It varied. There were quite a few that were of my age, but then also you had those that were, the squad leaders, platoon sergeants, those that had been in the military for a year or two or more, and some weren't too much older than we were. you know, but at the same time, you had to respect that rank. And so that's good, you know. And
now I understand. And so how many assignments in the 10 years that you had? 10 plus years, I have it here.
12 and a half. Yeah.
12 and a half. Okay. 12 and a half years. How many different assignments did you had? People today call them deployments. Back then, we called them assignments. What about you?
My first assignment was Germany. I stayed over there, and after leaving Germany, I left and came back to the U.S. to Fort Lee, Virginia, and I stayed there from 1983 to 85, about 2 years. And not long after that, in 85, in January 85, my father passed away, and I got back to the barracks, I think in February or March. Next thing I know, I had an assignment to go back to Germany.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And so I ended up...
Did you look forward to that?
Well, I kind of needed it.
Okay.
I kind of needed it. You know, I'm still grieving and dealing with the situation, and Fort Lee was nice, and I enjoyed it. But, you know, I had grew up a couple of years, and, you know, I was a little older, and I had my own vehicle, and, you know, I was able to get out and enjoy and do too much enjoying, and, you know. And so it was time for me to leave and get back. And so I got back to Germany and ended up in a place called Gießen, Germany. And there I ended up in another, I think I was in a maintenance company. I ended up in a maintenance company and worked there in the maintenance company. And after I was there for a little while, it was time for me to re-enlist.
Okay.
And during that re-enlistment, prior to that, I was offered to move from the job I was at to our sub-community to work for the sub-community commander as the in-and-out processing sergeant for the whole community. So, I mean, anybody that was coming into the community in Gießen, I was there to handle the operation of making sure the in-process and doing the initial briefing when they got there in Germany, telling them about what Germany was all about, what Gießen was all about, and handling them through all the in-and-out processing there. And I did that for a while, and then when it was time, when that tour ended, my re-enlistment was to do a back-to-back tour, what they called a consecutive overseas tour then. And so I finished that, and I chose to go to 56th General Hospital, which was down in a place called Munchweiler. Munchweiler was a little small town. And I got there in Munchweiler, stayed in Munchweiler for maybe about a year. And at Munchweiler, the first sergeant there was a E6 promotable. And I got there, and I was E5 by then. And the also ended up sitting in for the first sergeant at times when she was out. And so after staying there for a while, the next thing I did is I left there, and I was offered to go up to the headquarters, the Landstuhl. And so I ended up moving up to Landstuhl for the last part of that tour. And I was over the troop command as far as the administration for the soldiers. I was the assistant to the PAC supervisor there. And it was great. It was great working there in Landstuhl Hospital, taking care of the soldiers administration there, doing that. And had a great time there.
You got any experience? Like, what comes into my mind in terms of experiences, I think of the holidays, you know, Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's. Well,
when it got to that point that I was making rank, was in that sergeant range, you know, you had a lot of other families that were, you know, that were of that rank where you could get out and you could mingle more and be able to enjoy being in a more family type environment. And that's what a lot of us did. You know, we just got together and somebody cooked this, somebody did that, and we just all came together as a family and just enjoyed those holidays together. Because a lot of people, during that time got sad because they couldn't be at home, couldn't go home, and those that could did.
Did you ever get homesick? Do you remember that, or what was it like for you to be away?
It was during that last year before I left Germany that time. It was around about my birthday, and I had called home, and I told my mother, I said I didn't understand what was going on, but something was tugging at me.
Okay.
And I knew prior to then that I had a calling on my life, but I've been running. I've been running, doing what I wanted to do, and just being Obie. And so, it came to that point in time that I didn't know what was going on, and I called my mom and talked to her, and she said, "Well, just pray and see what the Lord is saying." I kind of knew what it was, didn't want to deal with it, and during that time frame, I kept on getting my SERs from my commanders and
my sergeant. What are those? Evaluation reports? Yeah,
NCO, right, evaluation reports. And it was always down in that portion where they say, what would you recommend as far as his next place of duty or, the next challenge for him? And all of them, for some reason, I always say, we recommend that he would make a good drill sergeant. I'm like,
oh, wow. I heard you were a drill sergeant.
Yes, and so what ended up happening is they kept on putting that on there for about 2 years or more. And I'm like, they putting this on here and it's not happening. I said, well, let me go ahead and volunteer for it.
Okay.
I volunteered and it came back, bam, just like that, And so I ended up leaving Germany, ended up back at Fort Jackson where I started at to go to drill sergeant school. And went to drill sergeant
I'm
school.
just curious, how long you're the only drill sergeant I've known other than the ones that used to scream at me. So how long is the training for a drill instructor?
It's pretty much the same training that you actually give to the soldiers.
Okay, and so is it like the course then, a 6-week course, an 8-week course?
I think it was like 9 weeks or so.
9 weeks, okay.
Right. And in that training, you pretty much got the same thing that you was going to be giving out.
Okay, so they treated you like you were a basic.
Yeah, well, that, but also you were trained that way, but you were trained to train.
Say more about that.
Being able to understand that you would have somebody's son or daughter or mother or father not understanding anything about the military would have to totally understand how to stand at the position of attention, how to march, how to make these different steps, how to make these different moves when marching. And so that means that you had to have a memory that you could sit there and call back and look at a person and line them up, in a certain order, help them to march in a step by the numbers and all of this. And it's very important because if you taught them wrong, that's the way they were going to do it.
That's the way they would do it.
So why did the people that were evaluating you, why did they think that you should be a drill sergeant? What was it in you that they saw? Does a drill sergeant need to be angry? Does he need to yell? What are they seeing that makes you
right? What were they
a candidate?
Seeing?
I think it was probably more so my discipline and my willingness of wanting to learn, my willingness of knowing how to wear the uniform with pride, and knowing that when I was assigned a squad, I made sure that my soldiers were on point, made sure that if nobody else was right in that platoon, mine was going to be right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took out time with them and worked with them and made sure that they were marching right, made sure their shoes were shined. Don't come out here and it's not right. So when you begin to, I guess, shoot a gun like that and begin to hold people in the order, that, I guess, begins to identify where's the best place to
So it was like, we call it in church life a gifting. You must have had a gifting for that, and they recognized it.
Right.
Yeah. Do you have any fond memories of being a drill sergeant? Any special things come to mind?
those special moments were really when you would finish a cycle. And what I mean is a cycle is that when those civilians come in and you end up helping them to transform from a civilian in those 9 weeks to being, that soldier, being that private that has some discipline. Mm-hmm. But I think the thing that really inspired, and I think probably with every drill sergeant out there, is when you had some of those soldiers that you didn't think would even come close to making it, and they did make it, and you had their parents to come up to you and say something like, I don't know what you did, but I thank you for what you did. Mm-hmm. I could not control my son. I could not control my daughter. They had no respect for me, and since they've been here, they call and they say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and yes, sir, and they have. I have a sense of respect now, and that in itself made a big difference. Mm-hmm. Just hearing that.
Yeah, that make a difference in someone's life.
Right.
Yeah.
How is a drill sergeant perceived within the military? So, I'm the civilian in the group here. I'm thinking yeah, man, Navy SEALs. Those guys are so cool. I think drill sergeants are so cool because I grew up watching Major Payne with Damon Wayans. And it was, I think, one of our favorite movies ever. Right. But so within the military is, how are you viewed? A drill sergeant is, obviously everybody's respected, I'm sure, but
you got that hat.
Yeah, we do have that hat.
Yeah,
that hat that everyone talks about. It's a very sound distinction of who you are and what you stand for. Mm-hmm. It's something that's bestowed upon you because of the character that you have and the character that you display for those soldiers. And this is what they need. You're talking sometimes about some people, young people, and even some, maybe your age or older, that have decided that they wanted to do something different with their life. They needed a change, and you have a chance to impact them in a way could make a difference, and probably in some of them save their life if it came down to a time of war or something. And so when you see that and you see the transformation that's happening right before you, it used to always excite me. I think there was only one time that I went to the MEP station to go and to pick up soldiers. Certain drill sergeants, they'd be glad to go and get them and bring back all the bags. And I used to always wait until they got back, and they'd come out there and they'd line them all up across the front and put the bags down and say, don't move. They tell them, don't move. No matter what, don't move. I would sit there and look at the door, sitting there looking out in front of them, and, just interesting. I'll walk out there and I'll walk real fast and get up close to them. They just open up. Didn't we tell you don't move? I wouldn't say it like that.
Right, I know, yeah.
What are you moving for?
Yeah, right.
So,
right.
Just to scare. But the thing is
just to scare them. That's the discipline. It's a different way.
Part of, and it's almost simply as a scare tactic to get their mind in a shock mode, but to bring them back to that place that you need them to be. And just in that itself.
And I think what people don't realize is that they're much more capable. They're able to handle much more than what they think they're capable of.
Right.
And that's really tested when under stress. And part of your job as the drill sergeant is to create stress, I would guess.
Yes, it was that what we call front load stress. Mm-hmm. And that front load stress would be there for the first few weeks until it was time that we had to get ready to prepare them to learn about the weapon. Okay. They learned about the weapon before they actually touched the weapon. Mm-hmm. And so by the time we got them ready to touch the weapon, we knew ourselves that we needed to get them back to another mode because we were too hype. You might have one of those that might do something different with the weapon.
Well, that's what I was, to be honest, I was thinking, and I cannot think of the movie, but it's the famous drill sergeant. He went on to become a movie star, and he just recently passed away.
Yeah, you're thinking of...
he's just like a hard...
Full Metal Jacket.
Full Metal Jacket.
Right.
Have you ever seen Full Metal Jacket?
Mm-hmm.
So then he's just ripping this one guy, just ripping him,
right.
and the guy breaks. Mm-hmm. That's an intense scene. I just watched it a few months ago.
Right.
How I'm not saying did you ever break anybody, but like when you guys are dealing with these individuals that you don't know where they're coming from,
Right.
and they're all thrown in the same barrack, did you have experiences where you went back and okay, I got to treat this person different, or was everybody the same? You treated them all the same, or how did that work?
You treat them all the same, but as time goes by, you learn who's who and what's what. And what I mean by that is that you learn who can help you to carry this platoon to make it across the finish line. And when you see that, you begin to point out those leaders, and you begin to get those people that will make sure that Joe Schmuck over here will do the right thing instead of the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
When that in a sense that them having that peer that's going to be around them, they'll give them that pep talk that they need, later on in the evening when they're in the barracks by themselves, getting things ready for the next day. And, it's always that we promote that you're a team, and we want everybody to win together. We want everybody to be able to make it together, even though we know that sometimes it's not going to happen. But as much as we can, we want to make sure that they know that, you're this team. And y'all don't want the other platoon to beat you over there, do you?
Mm-hmm.
And
so, healthy competition.
Right. And so with that, some of those team leaders that we put in place, we had to break them down too, because they got a little bit too hard on them,
Uh-huh.
So, and you talked about it earlier, shaping people. You're shaping them. And
Right.
so I remember we had 2 drill sergeants. We called them training instructors. One just believed in haranguing and just creating the stress. And later on in the cycle, the other guy, I guess it was sharing the work.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It was not his way. He said, and I remember, especially when you're learning certain things. He said, "I don't believe that people can learn their best when they're afraid." Mm-hmm. I was 18 when he said that. I've remembered that my entire life. Mm-hmm. If somebody is afraid of you,
Right.
then they're not going to respond to you.
That's true.
Give me your take on that, and disagree with it, however you want to think about it.
No, if they're afraid, they're not going to respond with the positiveness that you need.
Right.
If you're trying to accomplish something, there's a difference of giving a healthy fear and giving a fear of one just to not want to be around you and not be near you. That's a dangerous fear. And the healthy fear is that you're giving them something, and you're instilling, you're encouraging in maybe what one might say maybe an aggressive manner.
Right.
But at the same time, you're letting them know this is what it's going to take for you to be able to make it. And so when you do that, they will know that, you're not there to hurt them, but you show them that sign of how much you want them to be able to appreciate who they are. And so
going back to Jack's idea of Full Metal Jack, to me that was pushing all of the limits of the extremes,
right.
And I'm not so sure in today's military that would be excessive. They wouldn't do that.
Right.
way.
Yeah. And today's military, and even after I've gotten out, things have changed quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I was a drill sergeant, things were beginning to change and transition. Even then, that there were certain things that we couldn't. We didn't have to put anybody in timeout then. Timeout was getting down, giving me 20 or 30 or whatever it is. And they said, well, you can't give them but so many. Okay, but you can do 10 now,
right.
then 10 more and a few more minutes.
So how long were you a drill sergeant?
I was a drill sergeant for, it was 2 years, and I think it was a little bit more, a few months. And that was because of the time of the Persian Gulf War.
Okay.
That time, and things had changed, and as far as trying to get more drill sergeants in there to help to process these soldiers, and it became challenging. It became challenging because when you're looking at that, like you said, when you're in a Cold War state, and then all of a sudden you got a conflict, things change, and you have to begin to address things differently, and yes, things are in place, but they're not in place always exactly for what we need them in place for. Mm-hmm. So
did you miss anything about civilian life during your years in the Army?
I don't think I did because, being in the Army for me, after hours was just after hours, just like anything else. Once I got through my training, you would get off work that day and you could go out and go bowling and, go to the movies, do anything you wanted to do, go home, kick back with your family, your friends, and, do anything you wanted to do. Your weekends were yours, unless you had some specific duty that you were on. But, that's one of the things that we want to, try to express to the young people today that possibly might want to think about the military. You can still have a normal way of life, Yeah,
you get to do a lot of the things that anybody else would do that has a job.
Right.
Yeah. What would be some advice that you would give somebody that's, maybe thinking about going back in, or, going in as a married man, married woman, or maybe somebody going in for the first time? What would you propose or recommend to them? What would you want them to know or hear?
What I want them to know and possibly hear is that being a part of the military is probably one of the best things that could happen to them, as far as being a part of a group with the camaraderie and being able to be there, for, your country, your nation, wanting to be a part to do your part, in a sense. The thing that you could do as far as you can be able to go to school, go to college, and help you to pay for that and take care of those responsibilities. Those that are married, it will make sure that you can be able to provide for you and your family. Be it the regular active service or the reserves or the Guard. Any of those would be very good for any of our young people out here today. I think that all of them, every last one of them.
I
think that every last one of them needs to take some time and be a part of our military, so that you can say that you know what it's all about.
Well, and took your turn.
Right.
At protecting and defending.
Right.
The now, what you're a chaplain now, and we should talk about that another time maybe. But what do you think as a chaplain that veterans need? What are some of the things you're learning about or hearing about that veterans need?
Our veterans, be it those that have been in the World War II, Korean War, or any of the wars that we've had here recently, the Persian Gulf War and Iraq, Afghanistan. Being around them and seeing some of the challenges that soldiers are having, I don't think it should be a turnoff to anybody else, because I can see people, that are not in the military have some of the same challenges.
Yes.
And one of the things that I'm kind of glad to see now that PTSD is not just a stigma for the military. At one time, that's all you used to hear. It was just surrounded around the military. It was related
to the military.
Right.
All right.
Now people are seeing that we have people walk around here that have worked in corporate companies and, have done other jobs and other things and still are battling with PTSD, and PTSD, that they have had, from way back when, from their youth,
right.
Some of the traumas.
Traumatic, yes.
Right. Yeah. And so these are things that I'm glad to see that are coming out, and some of the things that are being diagnosed, so it can be able to help those that are in the military, those that are outside of the military, and also be able to help those people that come connected to them. And when I say that, as you were saying about what about those people that are going in the military and having a spouse, the wife or husband, or, having a significant other, they should know that the military does support family. It's very family oriented. I remember when I went in the military, it was a saying back then, back in the 80s. The military didn't assign you a wife. They didn't assign you.
Yeah, right.
And
so you don't need one.
Yeah. We didn't assign you one. So if you went out there and got it, that's so don't come here and tell us that your wife home crying or your husband, you got to get back home. That wasn't an assignment.
Right.
But since then, things have changed. Things have transitioned where, they're more for family oriented. They're more caring and concerned about, what can we do? Because it has come out to be that we have to know that whatever that soldier is going through, and if it's because of the family, we have to make sure, things are balanced.
Mm-hmm. So you think those changes are good then?
Oh yes, they're good, because if you talking about you got a soldier out there and he got this Dear John letter, or he got something going on back at home, and you sitting there trying to train them and get them ready for this, that, and the other. You don't have them. You don't have their full mind and body. And if you are not showing any concern for what they're going through, they're like, why do I need to be giving you all this when you're not concerned about what I'm going through? Mm-hmm. And so I'm glad to see that change has happened. That we do care about family. We do care.
I got a question. Why do you think that change has happened? Is it because culture has changed and so people are softer, or is it because the military just realized it's always been this way? There was a warrior back in the 70s and he had the same issues, but he'd be a better warrior had he had the support. I mean, why do you think that changed into this kind of more understanding military?
I think it changed because they began to see that we could get more out of this soldier, seeing that he would not only have to be worried about his family, he would have the support of his family. He would have the backing of them, that they knew what he was going through and he knew what they were dealing with. And they would be able to have that support that's needed, not just your platoon or your sergeant and everybody else around you, but you had that family that was there, and you had somebody that cared about the family that you had was there. And so I think that came from, back then, we used to get people that would go on leave and go AWOL. You very, very seldom hear that now. Mm-hmm. Back then, it was, they would go.
So they'd
be done with it.
So they had the same issues. They just weren't being dealt with.
Right.
Okay.
And so now, when they've seen that, hey, this can make a difference if you make sure that they got that full support that they need. Mm-hmm. They have that caring support. Somebody cares about them as much as you want them to get out there and be prepared for battle. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, this has been good, Obie. So you got out, and what year was that you got out of the Army?
I got out December the 23rd, 1993.
What time of the day? It's amazing how we remember that.
Yes. I think it wasn't far after noontime.
I was teasing. Yes. Okay.
It wasn't far after noontime. I know it was before 5.
Do you miss anything about those days?
I missed the time of traveling. I missed the time of being around, fellow soldiers. But when it came down to that time, like I said, I had that cry when I called my mother, and I knew it was a calling on my life. And,
to
accept my call into ministry.
Right.
And so I got out of the military, and prior to me getting out, I was back in the church and doing the things I was supposed to be doing a long time ago, and it would just flowed easy. It was me, because when I left home, there wasn't too many Sundays that I missed going to church. If nobody else in the house got up and go to church, I went to church. Even if I went out and went to the dance the night before that, that Friday before, I still got up. It was just something that I had to go. I had to be there. And so just in that, I accepted my calling and began in ministry and pastored, from that point. Started pastoring around about 95 and all the way up to 2015 in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it and still part of that church now. And they're the one that endorsed me to be out now and serve as a chaplain. be able to come back and pick up on that time that I left from the military. So that 12 and a half years that I had then, I'm now sitting at 17 years, and we'll be able to retire in 3 more years.
Yeah, that's a good feeling too. I'll let you know.
So sweet.
Yeah. So tell me, how did your faith help you through your life, especially in your military years?
Well, I grew up in a family where prayer was something that we did. We prayed. We believed in God. We talked about God. We served God. And from that, I guess the more that I was willing to learn, it was from a foundation of when I was in Philadelphia, and being there, living in Philadelphia, in a street of what we call row houses, right next to each other, all straight down the row, and there was a lady that lived across the street from us. You look out my door, right over to her door, just a little small street. Cars barely able to get through because you got one of a car on the side, and she used to hold Bible study for all the kids on the street. But I was, our house was directly across from her, so when Bible study wasn't going on, I was a lot of times right over there listening to Miss Mary, and she was telling me about the Lord and telling me that, and teaching me things, and we would have Bible studies, and I would have the answers, and I was always had the answers, and she used to encourage me, and I think because of that foundation that was set, and not that it wasn't happening at home, that I was getting that also, but she really, she was there, she just had that time, and I was on that step over there, just listening, and learning and growing from that. And I thank God that she was there in my life. I feel that was a part of that reason. And I even think today, that even my grandmother that got a chance to live up to the age of 105, had a chance to hear me preach, and she was very proud. And I just... it's things like that you look back and say, I'm glad I got it together when I got it together.
Yeah.
That those people that cared so much about you, and my grandmother say, I always seen it in you. I knew it was coming.
Sure. So you've you had a lot of people in your family that you've influenced, I think spiritually, but I think in terms of career paths, they probably... Did they, how do you think you were viewed as a veteran, someone who'd done their time, put in, basically you dedicated your youth, your best years of your life to military service. How do you think your family perceives you?
Well, I know that when I initially went in the military, they kind of looked at me like, you're leaving, and you're leaving at that age, you're going, and you're going that far. And but I had no fear about it.
Right.
I had no fear about it, and I look at parents nowadays that want to stop their children from, if you've done what you're supposed to do in making sure that they have that foundation that they need to have, knowing how to act when they get out there, you'll be all right. You'll be all right. But, in some...
So in many ways, they prepared you so that you could do that if that's what you were going to do.
Right. And but I guess it was a shock for me to jump out and go do it.
Right, yeah.
They wasn't expecting me coming back, say, hey, I signed up and I'm leaving.
Right. Yeah. Well, Obie, it's been my pleasure to have you here. I really appreciate that more than you think. And I like hearing your story. And there's a lot more to talk about. We can have you back. One of the things Jack and I want to do is to get a group of us together and talk about a topic or several themes.
Okay.
And just let the conversation sit out there in the middle of the room and people can learn from what they want.
Yeah, because what I'm finding from people who have either spoken with us or have listened, it's a common theme where, man, you didn't even scratch that guy's surface.
Right.
Right. I've had some people, because everybody's got a different story, and some are more... I don't know, quote unquote traumatic. Maybe they had something, they were carrying a gun and something happened, whatever it is. But most people that have been listening have been can tell that there's so much more to you veterans than we all are hearing, you know? And so this is hopefully a platform where we can just get a little bit of it. Doesn't have to be gratuitous, you know, but I mean, it's just a way to kind of get a civilian like me to understand a little bit more.
Well, and I'm glad you're here, Jake, because you hear things and you want to know things. And I mean, and your story's not much different. It's just you didn't wear a uniform.
Well, I tell you what, the PTSD thing is interesting. And like what you talk about with the stigma of, I wonder if that was always kind of a military thing. People, like, when they think of PTSD, they thought of a wounded warrior,
right?
You know, so that's just really interesting because I've heard that in the regular everyday life, so much more from people who had marital issues, just something traumatic, or if it was a birth defect with their baby, or there's so much. You know, so that was an interesting topic, just to hear how that is not just military. So I really appreciate you being here too. It's been good.